AWS. So, just a quick agenda. We're going to start with a high-level overview of, just our partnership and, especially focusing on integrations between UiPath and AWS. But then Vedant, my counterpart at AWS, is going to provide a little bit of perspective and some more detail on, a lot of the great AI ML capabilities across Amazon. And we'll walk a little bit through, public sector focused use cases, ways to apply, and practical applications of those AI ML capabilities among, other categories. And I've got a few demos. I'll try to pull up a few things live in studio, but I've also got a bunch of demos across different areas like contact center, IT automation, and a lot of those AI capabilities. So, just kind of jumping right into everything at a very high level. From a partnership perspective, we see a couple of core areas where UiPath and AWS are a great fit for joint solutions. So, the first one is pretty simple. It's how we're deployed on AWS. AWS is a great accelerator to deploying Studio and robots, and especially Orchestrator across, across the cloud securely. We've got a lot of quick starts. We've got a lot of ways to enable things like auto scaling, a lot of great maintenance and management automation within AWS. But then a lot of what we're going to talk about today is the second bucket here, where we have that idea of operationalizing AI, where if we take the breadth of capabilities and across Amazon's AI stack, we can operationalize a lot of that with UiPath execution, with our robots executing on inferences or decisions, things like that. And we're going to talk about that a lot more as we go through the presentation today. And then there's also a lot of IT automation activities we have with a lot of different AWS tools like workspaces and EC2 and S3. We've got activities and integrations for those. I'll provide a little bit of detail on that. And time willing, we'll spend as much time as we can near the end on the call center, because there's a lot of great integration with Amazon Connect for both inbound and outbound, with IVR, with chat using Amazon Lex, and a lot of other things. So, getting into the public sector use cases at a high level, we see a lot of great use cases for both UiPath and AWS across a couple of areas. So from a functional side, there's a lot around document digitization of paper-based scanned documents, document processing, intelligent document processing, extracting data using both of our capabilities, storing in S3. A lot of processing of semi and unstructured data, and then of course classification, categorization, routing of all types of different data using a lot of those different ML models that are available. So that could be prioritization based on sentiment. That could be identifying the category, attempting to classify an item, whether it comes from email or a document or any other type of data source. A lot of cross-system integration. So a lot of integration with claims and benefit systems and healthcare systems. Incorporating AI ML to adjudication, things like object detection and lots of different image capabilities. And then definitely IT migrations and modernization. So a lot of what we see is, customers moving from bare metal, from their existing, on-prem to the AWS cloud. And so a lot of what we can do from an IT automation standpoint, in terms of migrations, in terms of maintenance, in terms of test automation, things like that. And then also applying AI to use cases like fraud, waste, and abuse. And from an industry or department perspective, there's a lot here, but we see those functional capabilities on the left, really aligning with contact center, supply chain, legal, IT, procurement. Finance is a huge one for UiPath. Anything from public works and transportation and public safety and justice. You're thinking about adjudication use cases and things like that. And a lot of what we're going to talk about today is sort of those core areas of AI, ML, infrastructure, contact center, including chatbots, and of course, document processing as sort of a subset of AI, ML. So, the first really simple integration that I want to bring up is just, again, our UiPath deployment across AWS. So we've got some great tools like auto deployment, auto scaling for scaling out and, deprovisioning robots based on your use. Lots of quick starts, both for Automation Suite and our standalone installation on AWS. So I'll provide a lot more links after the session to, what we can do with standalone, what we can do with Automation Suite, all the different things we have in both the AWS marketplace and on our side, and that's across the entire AWS stack using EC2, using Elasticsearch on Amazon, and then that's for Studio, for virtual, for unattended robots, and of course for Orchestrator. And then I'll pass it off here, Vedant, if you want to walk through a little bit of the AWS ML stack, because a lot of what we're going to talk about here is sort of that breadth of capabilities across all these different areas and how UiPath can be incorporated.
Sure, thanks, Mo. So yeah, like you can see on the slide, Amazon has a very comprehensive AI and ML stack. In total, we have more than 250 services that are specifically related to AI and ML that we can't even, we couldn't even put on this one slide. But the way we break these services down, or the stack down, is kind of in this layer cake architecture. So, and the idea is to target all different kinds of users of AI and ML, from business analysts to developers, all the way to like very expert, data scientists, and then very expert practitioners as well. And the idea is, when we target people of different levels of expertise, we're also thinking about, how these users, based on their profile, will be incorporating AI or using AI to build these applications. So we try to remove this, the undifferentiated heavy lifting, so that our customers can move faster and getting value out of the AWS ecosystem. At the top, you see this AI services layer. So the idea here is that we are investing heavily in pre-packaging a lot of the AI capabilities that we develop in-house. These are based on decades of research and development that has been going on in Amazon. Some of these services are actually used by Amazon Corp internally as well, and we are surfacing these for our end customers to use as well. The idea behind this top layer, where you have AI services, is that you can have users that are, let's say, application developers who don't necessarily know about AI, but they want to add intelligence to their application, right? So, this is ready-made intelligence applications and workflows. So, for example, if you want to personalize your customer experience and you want to add that capability in your application, or you want to forecast business metrics, you want to have some machine translation capabilities, such as you want to automatically translate from Spanish to English, or we support many languages. Dozens of languages. Or if you want to, for example, there is this use case that we work with the UiPath as well. There is medical use cases that we have a specific application for, Comprehend Medical. Or if you want to just extract meaning from documents, there is a specific service for that as well. So really a broad spectrum of these services in the top layer. And then if you look at, the bottom layer, that's really meant, the ML frameworks and infrastructure layer. It's meant for, really expert practitioners who are trained in hardware, who are very well versed with software development kits and, CLIs and whatnot. And so, there we offer a whole host or whole suite of different frameworks and hardware. So we support a lot of the open source frameworks, such as PyTorch, MXNet. So here, you can bring your own deep learning containers. You can build your deep learning containers on top of that, in case you're not using, let's say, a typical interactive way of developing your machine learning application. So we support, for example, MXNet, PyTorch, Hugging Face, TensorFlow. These are the common ones. And then obviously you're probably well versed with EC2. We have many different machine learning optimized EC2 instances that are both CPU as well as GPU enabled as well for deep learning workflows. And then recently we also announced Inferentia, and Inferentia has been there. It was announced last year, but we announced Trainium as well this year, which is really optimized for training workloads. So when working with Trainium and Inferentia together, based on internal benchmarks, It provides, they both provide 30% higher throughput when training a machine learning model, and 45% lower cost per inference. So again, like I said earlier, we can, we are really invested heavily in making the customer's life easier. And then there's also this elastic inference capability. So if you're adding inferencing, so you have a machine learning model and you are scoring the data that comes in. For example, you may be scoring, whether a particular transaction was a fraud transaction. You'd want to do that in real time, and you would have, let's say, millions of such transactions or billions of such transactions coming in every minute or every hour. And you want to add elastic capabilities. So, this may happen when during the day you want to scale up, and then at night you want to scale your inferencing infrastructure down. So we have elastic inferencing capabilities as well. And then finally, in the middle, what brings these two different layers together is our ML services layer. And this is primarily what we call Amazon SageMaker. You will see a bit of that in today's demo as well. This is, where we provide the ability for every developer and every data scientist to build, train, and deploy machine learning models at scale. SageMaker Studio is our de facto IDE, which, as you can see in this slide in the center, where you can go all the way from preparing data, and we have a plethora of tools. We have both code-based capabilities using Jupyter Lab notebooks, as well as low-code, no-code capabilities using SageMaker Data Wrangler, where you can just read the data and you can prepare the data, you can transform it, you can do bias detection, you can do explainability, you can train models. Either using the frameworks that I talked about earlier that are supported using code, or we also have this autopilot capability, which allows you to use AutoML in a no code, so you don't have to write any code to train a particular model. You can do hyperparameter tuning, and then you can deploy the model in production and do predictions and explain your predictions, and as well as managing and monitoring your model. So really end-to-end capabilities when it comes to building your machine learning workflow, and all of that is encapsulated within the SageMaker ecosystem. We also have Canvas. Like I said, there is also, we are also investing heavily in the low-code, no-code capabilities. So SageMaker Canvas is a place where you don't need to know any code for simpler use cases such as regression, classification, or forecasting. You can basically just point to the data set, and SageMaker Canvas will come up with with a dashboard view of your data. You can drag and drop your visualizations, and you can also train a model without having to write a single line of code. And then also there is human in the loop machine learning services, which are based on SageMaker Ground Truth, which is our labeling engine. So really, SageMaker is that middle of the layer, which brings the other two layers together, and it also is like the entry point into the machine learning ecosystem within AWS. So that's it from my side. Back to you, Mo.
Oh, no, that was great. I appreciate all the detail. And yeah, so as a UiPath user who gets access to a lot of these services, within Studio, a lot of these will be AWS skills that I can pull into my Studio workflow. So if you think about a UiPath workflow beginning with some type of document processing, or pulling data out of a legacy application, something like that, we can then incorporate via our activities something like Amazon Translate or Comprehend, or transcribe, recognition, etc. So you can begin a workflow, with a lot of the common activities you have, like downloading multiple images, pulling images from one source to another. You can take something like recognition and apply that skill to the data set that you have. But then, on the other side, a lot of what we see, especially within Contact Center, is you can invoke UiPath robots as part of an Amazon flow. So a great example is within Amazon Connect, whether it's IVR or, Lex with chat, you can just set up a Lambda function to trigger an unattended robot, as part of your Amazon flow. So that could be, perform a verification. That could be, have the robot pull some information, validate it, etc., and then continue through your flow. And we'll show a couple of examples of that. But without getting into too much more detail, because I think that was just covered really well. The areas we look at are sort of those skills that you add to UiPath, including visual understanding, including conversational understanding, a lot of those specialized skills. There are definitely, some. There's some overlap between some capabilities, but what we've seen is the breadth and especially the depth of the features, across that AWS stack. As you incorporate those to your workflows, it just gives you a huge set of tools, across things like recognition and comprehend and translate and textract. And again, without going into too much detail, on each one, I did want to show, and we'll send this ahead as well, or after the session as well. I did want to show all the different activity packs we have. So we have recognition, we have textract, for document processing, we have comprehend and comprehend medical, which was referenced earlier. Very, very useful in public sector, within our health and human services and healthcare practices. We have translate, and I did want to spend a little bit of time today. I was hoping this would be ready for the session today. I think we're a few weeks away. So, in our 2023.1 release, I believe is what it's targeted for. You're going to see our SageMaker integrations, and that's going to be our way to pull a lot of what Vedant just talked about, from SageMaker into that sort of operationalized AI idea of UiPath. So we can connect models into your UiPath business workflows. We can help data science teams with a lot of that data structuring and gathering, in addition to all those capabilities Amazon has. And increase your time to value and speed for ML innovation. And the activities, just like a lot of our other activities, are going to look like within Studio. As part of my Studio workflow, I might have a step where I want to take my data set and I want to get an inference on it. So I can pick a model, I can provide my input, and I'll get that inference as an output. So we'll have a lot more detail on that as these come out, but I did want to at least provide just a quick sneak peek, on what the activity is going to look like. And Vedant, if you wouldn't mind, maybe we can pull up SageMaker and just click through a little bit of what that side looks like, just to show, a little bit of context on what you're going to be pulling in once you have access to it in Studio. And I can stop sharing, and you should be able to share your screen.
Sure. Can you see my screen?
Yep.
Okay, great. So Amazon SageMaker obviously is a service within AWS. In order to access SageMaker, when you log into your AWS console, this is what your console looks like. You can go into services, or you can just search right here for SageMaker. When you click into SageMaker, here you can see all the different capabilities of SageMaker itself, right? So, here you have Studio Lab is another feature. It's a lightweight version of Studio Lab, of SageMaker Studio that I talked about earlier. Canvas, I talked about, it's a low-code, no-code way of, or no-code way of building and training these models. And obviously, we support bring your own license with our Studio as well. Here you can see if you have any custom images. And then we have Jumpstart. These are some packages that we have solutions and models that we have pre-packaged for you, and I'll show you that in the demo in a little bit. Then we have our own labeling service known as Ground Truth. When you train, for example, when you train a particular machine learning model, you can either bring your own algorithm. You can find an algorithm on the AWS marketplace, which are these are third-party algorithms, that you can just click into marketplace and for example, there is an algorithm for redacting license plates of cars. So you don't have to go and retrain those models, right? You can find such models already trained that you can use in your application. And then once you train a model, you'll be able to see the results of the model training here. I have been working with some climate data in the past, so I have And you can see, I use scikit-learn. I used AutoML image for scikit-learn here to train the model. And then you have all these other details about the model as well. Once you have a trained model, you can either, when you run the inferencing on the data set, right, the final data set where, which you're going to derive intelligence out of, you can either do that in real time, or you can do that in batch. And then there are many different options that we support as well, such as synchronous, asynchronous, and serverless. But in essence, you can either create a batch, like a bulk inferencing job, or you can create an endpoint, and the endpoint will allow you to run inferencing as and when, on demand, as and when data comes in, right? So really useful when you're building these applications. And that's also what we are targeting in version 1 of our collaboration with UiPath, is that as an end user, you'll be able to add intelligence to your applications by creating these endpoints and using the UiPath UI to be able to call this endpoint and do inferencing in real time. Once I have these endpoints, for example, this is an endpoint. You can see that it's you can see the status, if it's in service or not. And then if I go within the endpoint, there are all these different metrics that I have access to, which instance is behind the endpoint, and other metrics as well. So let's say I want to start as a data scientist, right? Where do I basically start from? I start from SageMaker Studio. In order to access SageMaker Studio, I just hit Studio, and then I will hit Open Studio, and that will open a brand new window or a new tab in your browser. And here you can see, within Studio, there are all these different options. One is, you can use, let's say you already have the data on S3, and you want to start modeling that data, right? And start building a machine learning model. So, one very useful service is what we call SageMaker Jumpstart. And these are pre-packaged, like I mentioned earlier, pre-packaged solutions and models that you can use right off the bat. So let's say you have a document understanding use case, or let's say you are doing demand forecasting. So if I want to do demand forecasting, I can directly just go there, point and just launch the solution from here, right? And then there is a notebook that walks us through what the output, when you launch the solution, what that solution will look like. Similarly, there is this product defect solution. Again, if you're identifying defects in a product for visual inspection of let's say, defect of cans coming out of a supply chain. So here, you can just simply launch the solution, and the output of the solution is a real-time endpoint that you can then embed in your application for inferencing. It's a very useful service. In some cases, a lot of these solutions can be customized as well. So either customized from a solution standpoint, where you're customizing the logic behind the solution, or also if you want to customize the model itself. Let's say you want to use transfer learning for a specific kind of data set. So very useful, for example, in our autonomous vehicles department, where the model is already there. It's pre-trained to identify pedestrians, trees, some of the standard features, road signs and whatnot, but you want to train it specifically for the area, your area of interest. So you want to add some existing data. So you don't have to modify or like retrain the model from scratch. You can just essentially use the concept of transfer learning. So you reduce cost, and it's a lot faster. So Jumpstart is very useful in that sense. And then, if you wanted to fire up a notebook, let's say you wanted to do all using code, you can do that as well. We support, we have these Jupyter Lab notebooks underneath. We also support, many different kinds of, like we have pre-packaged many different kinds of kernels and images. So depending on, if you're using GPU-based training, or, if you're using a specific package, there are some pre-packaged, images for you here as well. And then, let's say you didn't want to use notebooks, you wanted to use some, a low-code, no-code style feature. So we also have what we call a data wrangler. So if I go into the SageMaker resources, you can see all the different capabilities within SageMaker Studio, right? So we have feature store, we have experiments and trials, where if you did a train multiple models, you can have or look into each training job and see how the model performed. We have a model registry, so you can register different versions of the models. Endpoints, I already talked about that, and then there's many other options as well. And then one specific one that I'll point out is Data Wrangler. So this is our low code, no code feature or tool for transforming the data before you feed it to a machine learning model, right? So a lot of times, a lot of data scientists and users spend a majority of their time in just making sure the data is in the right format before they can even train the machine learning model. And depending on the model that you may need to convert the data in multiple different formats specific to that model. So Data Wrangler can be a very useful feature in that sense. So this is basically a drag and drop tool, right? So you can drag different kinds of widgets based on the transform that you're applying. So in the beginning, you'll see source, and in this case, my source is all S3, but we support over 50 different sources, right? We all the way from Amazon products such as RDS or Redshift, to like third-party integrations like Snowflake, Databricks, etc. So once you get the data in using the source connector, if I can go into source, I'll be able to see. I'll be able to see the data here. I'll be able to visualize the data. It'll also create like a distribution of each of the column, like a data distribution of each of the column. And then I can add transforms. I can go and build transforms, right? So for example, I can modify the data type. In this case, I'm not doing anything, but I can convert, for example, string to int, and so on and so forth. And then I can also have custom functions, and this can use both local Python, or we can also use Spark, right? So in this case, if the Data Wrangler low code, no code offering is not enough, then you can add, you can write snippets of code, inside within Data Wrangler and add custom transforms here as well. And then you can drop columns, you can join these data sets together as well, right? So it's running a little bit slow right now, just bear with me. But the idea is, once you have the data set that you need, you can export that out to S3, or you can also directly just launch a training job using Autopilot. And I haven't mentioned Autopilot, but Autopilot is our automated machine learning capability. So you have the data set, if you want to run a regression or a classification job, you tell Autopilot what kind of model, what kind of job you want to run, and it will basically run this very expansive hyperparameter tuning job and come up with the best model for you without you having to write any code or think about how to tune hyperparameters. So essentially, you can launch a training job directly from Data Wrangler as well. This reInvent, we also announced a feature where you can run inferencing jobs from within Data Wrangler as well. So all said, very useful capability for you to get started with your machine learning projects very, very quickly. There are all these different features within SageMaker Studio. So this interests you. It's available to you within the AWS console. Go ahead and give it a try. And if you have any questions, you can reach out to us directly.
Awesome. And if you want to keep that up for 1 sec, I think a really cool opportunity for us is on the front end, if you've got legacy data sources, you've got, whether it's mainframes, semi-structured documents, web-based or custom application data, just like what we've talked about in the past with Snowflake, and other, data storage tools, we can talk to Snowflake or S3 or really any of those data sources for what you're seeing here. And so, we can help refine that data. We can help, provide a more complete data set, and then that's going to then improve the amount of data available to your AI model. And then on the, on the back end of the process, as soon as you've got an inference, we can request that and we can act on it. So if there's a finding, if there's a potential defect, if there's any type of something's flagged, we can execute on it. So we can then have our robots take some type of remediation activity or corrective activity based on that inference. And I think there's a lot of power on both sides of that workflow to then incorporate all these AWS skills within your UiPath workflow, and then also execute on AWS, like we're going to see in a couple of examples today. So I really appreciate that walkthrough.
Thank you, Mo. So should I hand it back over to you?
Sure. I think we have a quiz coming up. So if you want to stop sharing, let me just double check. Rohit, I think it's all yours because we have a quick quiz, and then we're going to go back into a couple more slides and some demos.
Yes, sure. Just a sec, I'll just pull up the screen. I'm just sharing the link where you can join the quiz on the chat over here. So please follow the chat. I will also share my screen. Just a sec. Sorry guys, just give me a sec. I'll just set it up.
And as we're doing that, if there's any questions, I know we covered a lot pretty quickly. If there's any questions, please feel free either to unmute or throw them in the chat.
Just an issue, just some. I'm facing some issues. Maybe more. You can go ahead. I'll just circle back with the platform.
Sure, no problem at all. Let me reshare. Yep. I've got a couple more slides, and yeah, whenever you're ready for a break for the quiz, just let me know.
Sure.
And we should see PowerPoint coming back up. So a couple more categories that we talked about, and actually, because we just covered quite a bit. Just to summarize again, so we just went through AI. I wanted to spend just a couple of minutes on what we can do around IT automation, but then especially on the call center. And, we can pause for a quiz anytime within that, but let me just switch back to presentation mode. And yeah, so a lot of the additional activities we have are around IT automation. So we've got AWS activities for S3, for EC2, for workspaces. And, just as I'm talking through these, if you pull up Studio within legacy application or legacy workflow types, if you search for Amazon within our official feed, you'll see a lot of the, actually, if we start with AWS, I think you're going to see a longer list. You're going to see a lot of official activities around Elastic Compute Cloud, WorkDocs, Simple Systems Manager, etc. And then if you look up Amazon with the UiPath logo, you'll see that we've got, our general Amazon Web Services, Amazon Comprehend, Workspaces, and Connect activities. So within Web Services, you're going to see EC2, you're going to see S3, and a couple of others. But these all have CRUD type activities like create bucket, for S3, update, empty, delete, get, etc. Both single and bulk, for something like a list, and then that includes policies. And then a lot of Amazon specific functionality like ACLs and things like that. So that's across a lot of these IT automation type areas. And then The next part that I had here, let me just check. Actually, real quick, so a couple of common use cases we see are, a lot of that nightly power off, infrastructure optimization, on-demand availability, security orchestration across Amazon cloud. So green computing, with that same idea of your nightly, your schedule, daily power on, off, all via UiPath Studio workflows. So, from a schedule standpoint, I mean, you can set up something nightly, etc., but you could also do something a lot more real time, thinking about some of those scenarios that we were just talking about. So if I have some type of finding, if I want to spin down all my VMs because there could be some type of security breach that I identified, using maybe an ML model or some other trigger, I can then have my workflow do that automatically based on that trigger. And there's a lot of power behind what we can do at scale with IT automation across your AWS environment. And then what I really wanted to focus on for a few minutes before getting into a couple of additional demos is, we can do a lot of really cool things with the, sorry, let me just go back into a presentation mode, with, in the contact center space with Amazon CCI. So, just like Amazon, we focus a lot on the areas of self-service and agent assistance, and then we can pull in all those additional systems and business processes. So, I think that's really the idea of, you've got a lot of great tools within the Amazon Contact Center solution, and then we can provide integration across other applications. We can be triggered by events within a Amazon conversation. We can set up an outbound phone call. We can hook up to IVR and do something based on inbound information. And all of that can help agents, that can help self-service, if it's a chatbot, if it's conversational IVR. And a couple of examples are, and I've got, sort of a more high-level breakdown in just a second, but, a couple of examples are, if I have an inbound call via, handled by AWS IVR, my robots can then do some of that agent assistance type activities. So we can set up Amazon Lambda functions to trigger unattended robots or the attended robot on an agent's desktop. And that could be, pull data from a mainframe, perform a password reset, do some type of Active Directory action, pull data from API-enabled applications like Salesforce and Workday, the Microsoft Stack, ServiceNow, et cetera, but then also especially legacy and custom applications. So that could be a lot of data within Access databases or web-based applications or documents, et cetera. And so at that point, UiPath can then extend all those different capabilities into your Connect flow, and then it can close the loop. It can basically, update the status, do a write back to Amazon to say this item is complete, here's the confirmation ID, et cetera. And so, yeah, what I wanted to go through, again, at a high level, just kind of a crowded slide, but really across all those different channels, there's a lot of great opportunities to plug in AWS functionality and then also augment that with UiPath. So, for voice, for SMS, for web portals and chat, you might have Amazon Connect plugged into, let's say, IVR or SMS or live chat via by Amazon Lex, and then UiPath and Amazon, thinking about a lot of those AI capabilities we just talked about, we can do a lot of things like rules-based triage, classification, verification, and routing, but then also expand that to include AI and ML. So that could then be, adding models for fraud detection, for more intelligent classification or indexing or routing, prioritization based on sentiment, based on flagged items, anything like that. And then a lot of what we can help do is on the self-service side. So if your chatbot, as an example, with Lex can identify certain intents via NLP, we can then act on that. So we could do something like fulfill a request, order me a new laptop, or order me, you check the status of my order, check the status of my request, help me troubleshoot, submit a complaint or dispute for me, help me process my payment, things like that. And so a lot of these could be done with a combination of UiPath and AWS via self-service, but then anything that doesn't go straight through to the end with those with those back office steps that you see at the end are going to go to an agent. And that's where we can help with an agent who's on CCI. We can help aggregate all that information from the caller, from their details, from different systems, pulling information in from a CRM, an ERP, different ITSMs, synchronizing data across. You're taking an identifier and synchronizing it across multiple applications, things like that. So I think there's a lot of power around using our platforms together and having UiPath do a lot of that integration, a lot of that execution based on what Amazon is handling as sort of that core user interface. And another quick example I want to show here, and this is a public sector example for a large state, is we can also kick off a process. So we could start with, let's say, a spreadsheet. We could start with a list of people who need a call, based on their status, based on some type of identified conditions. So we could use Amazon Connect within Studio, within our activities, to make those outbound phone calls. And then we can help do some of that validation, some of the verification, and then we can complete the process. So once the user has, let's say, provided their social security number, securely over voice, or provided missing information, we can then make updates across different applications. So a lot of great opportunities to kick off a process within Amazon and call it UiPath, but then also do the reverse. So Rohit, I didn't know if we wanted to pause and go to the quiz, or if we wanted to pull up a couple of demos, because I've got a couple of
Yes.
examples of these two scenarios.
Yeah, I think we can quickly go to the quiz. I'll just paste the link on the chat once again for everyone to join. So you can please go to this link which is posted on chat and join the quiz. Meanwhile, I'll quickly share my screen. You can also go to www.menti.com. Not sure if you can see my screen. Yes, we have 9 people here. Okay, I'll just wait for 5 more seconds. Yeah, we have 10%. You can go to www.menti.com and just add this code over here, 82021192, and you will be able to enter this link. So Mo, we go with the first 2 questions here?
Yeah, let's do it.
Yep, awesome. So let's get started. So the thing is, all these questions are multiple choice questions. So please do make sure that you answer them correctly, but that might just not be enough with the competition. You might also have to answer the fastest to get the reward. So here we go, and here we get started. So here is the first question. What are some areas where AWS and UiPath work great together? The options are AI, ML, IT automation, contact center, BI analytics dashboard. Integration is still being explored. You can see the countdown timer. Everyone has voted the correct answer. So everyone is there.
Hey, good job, guys.
Let's see. To go next. Yeah, we'll just quickly look at the leaderboard. So as everyone has answered correctly, it is all about who answered the fastest. And Mohan, you are quite up there, but Vasant, Cesar, Aileen, all of you are quite close. So we'll quickly go to the next question as well. So please be prompt, and here we go. UiPath does not have native integrations for recognition, Alexa, and comprehend. You still have 10 seconds. Everyone has voted. Alexa is the right answer. And let us see where we stand. Okay, so I think we have a change in leadership now. Vasant, Aileen, Vinod, you are quite close. So you still have 2 more questions to stand a chance to win again. So we will circle back to it later during the course of this session. Mo, back to you.
Great, thank you so much, and good job, everybody. I think it's the first time I've seen everyone get everything right. In one sec, let me reshare my screen. And from a demo perspective, I've got a couple of recorded demos. I was going to try to show a couple things live. I couldn't get them working right before this session, but actually, let me pause real quick. Let me try to pull up one thing real quick on that. Just bear with me for 1 sec. All right, perfect. I think we're working. So yeah, let me reshare my screen. So I lost access to one of the Amazon workspaces I was going to use today. So what I wanted to show is, from a UiPath perspective, we can do a lot of, obviously stuff with legacy applications, with custom, etc. So if I've got, a workflow like I want a password reset within a mainframe. So from a UiPath assistant perspective, I would start with my assistant. It would be menu driven. I would identify, here's my use case. I can press play, and I'll kick off my process. So I can do something like, let's go ahead and reset my password within a mainframe application, which is great for sort of that limited scope of, I know exactly what I want to do. I have it in my assistant. I go ahead and kick it off. But if I want to incorporate that into a broader process, I think there's a great opportunity from a self-service standpoint and also, the agent assistant standpoint to pull something like this into an Amazon workflow. So what I'll show is, as this closes up, if we decided instead of kicking this off, attended via my workflow here, the video that I'm going to pull up really incorporates that into a broader workflow that starts with Amazon Connect. So and I'll include links to this if anybody wants to see this in a little bit more detail. But the idea is for a for something kicked off within, let's say, IVR. So I start out with a soft phone. If I have a phone call, what UiPath can do is we can talk to the mainframe like you just saw. We can also pull data from a spreadsheet. And the idea here is if a caller says, they want to talk to an agent. So as soon as they go into an agent's queue, UiPath can then help the agent with all this different information. So I might have documents, I might have a couple of different spreadsheets, I might have a mainframe where there's an action like reset the password. But what will happen here is the user's going to call first. You can see the flow here, and then within the Amazon Connect flow, I can set up those Lambda functions to call UiPath. I can pass parameters, and then the workflow can do something and then pass parameters back to Amazon. So we'll start with the call, and the agent is going to hit accept call. So this is their screen now with all their different applications available. And as soon as the agent hits accept call, so the caller's calling in now. They're being assisted by the IVR. They ask to speak to an agent, or it gets escalated because their problem couldn't be solved. And so now they're going to be transferred to an agent. The agent's going to hit accept call. And what UiPath can do is it can start pulling all that information as soon as it has, let's say, an identifier. So it could be a customer ID, it could be an employee ID. And based on what's happening on the call, it can look up related information. So if they're asking about the warranty of their how much warranty do you have left on your office printer? Is there data within a mainframe, like in the top right? Let's pull the data there. Is there something within a spreadsheet? So we can help sort of consolidate all that information based on a trigger from Amazon, and that's going to help the agent on each call. So all that information can be consolidated. As an agent, I don't have to pull up the mainframe. I don't have to go through the documents. My robot knows exactly where to look. And then on the other side of that, type of, the opposite pattern, if we're doing an outbound call, the other demo video I had here is if we kick off the process. So we start out with, let's say, a spreadsheet, if we have an app or a form or anything like that, but we're going to kick off the process as part of our UiPath business workflow. We can make an outbound phone call using Amazon Connect to all of the names here with the phone numbers provided here. And if we're missing information, like let's say the SSN, we can securely grab that through the phone call and then put it into a securely stored spreadsheet. So what you'll see is The robot is going to take this type of flow. So again, we're going to have a couple of Lambda functions within the within the Amazon Connect workflow, but then we also have our UiPath workflow that's going to kick off the outbound call. So as soon as that starts, so we'll kick it off from our UiPath assistant or app. And so the robot can start making that outbound call. It can use Amazon Connect. It can get that information. What you'll see quickly in just a second is that information being provided or being entered into the spreadsheet. And I apologize, I couldn't run this one live. I was trying right before the meeting, but I didn't have my Connect instance set up. So as soon as the outbound call is done, what you'll see is we can start taking that information and we can go call by call and put the information in the spreadsheet. So that's a great unattended scenario where it could be a completely automated outbound call and collection of that number. It could also be agent assistance based on what needs to happen. So I'll pause there. I think that's most of what we had today. Were there any questions on anything we presented today or anything you guys would want to see a little bit more of?
Feel free to add your questions on the chat.
So we do have a couple of questions here.
Yes.
But that's a great question on S3. Yeah. So for orchestrator logs, we definitely have ways to export those. I haven't personally seen S3, but Vedant, any idea on that? Not to put you on the spot, but we could do some more research on that as well, and I can try to get a better answer on that. And the other question, there's a couple more questions. So for CAPTCHAs, that's a really interesting question. From a technical level, we can do certain things around the CAPTCHA. I think from a compliance standpoint, that's usually where it gets a little bit tricky. I think there are ways to incorporate object detection, things like that. But I think from a EULA or the the actual compliance standpoint, I think that might be trickier. But so I guess the short answer is maybe. But it's a really interesting use case. I've seen it come up a lot. And then for enterprise blockchain, so I don't have a ton of background in that. Vedant, any idea, any thoughts on blockchain? You know, even if it's a non-UiPath integration, you know, just anything in general we can share. And not sure we still have him. So yeah, I think not too much for that one, but yeah, I can also check if I can find anything on that just in the background. But any other questions, especially about the integrations, anything else that we can try to help with? And Vedant, I cannot hear you. See if you're, let me see if you're muted. Because I think you were trying to answer on both of those, so I apologize.
You're able to hear me now?
Oh, there we go. Yep, you're unmuted. You're good now.
Yeah, I was trying. I mean, we are trying to export those orchestrator logs to S3. I mean, I was just wondering if we can build some of those metrics dashboard from those logs based on bots execution. So, is there any tools, you know, within AWS toolkit? Do you suggest, you know, for those purposes?
Yeah, and I think let me see if I can unmute Vedant, because I think he was trying to answer it, and I think he's just stuck on mute. Rohit, anything we can do?
Yeah, I think he is unmuted now. Vedant, can you speak? He is muted. No, Vedant, maybe you will have to log in, leave and then rejoin. Maybe that might help.
And also, if you want to put anything in the chat, we can always kind of talk through it that way as
Yep.
well if you're having
Yep.
trouble with audio. Okay, he's dialing back in, so just bear with us for 1 second. Yeah, I'd love to get a little bit of color on both those questions from the Amazon perspective. As always, thanks everybody for your patience with the little technical hiccups. I think there's always a few when everyone's remote, so really appreciate everyone's patience. And Rohit, if we want to give him a couple of minutes, maybe we should just do the last few quiz questions, and then he should be back after that, if that works.
Sure, that works. If you can just stop sharing your screen.
Yep, just did.
Awesome. So, so everyone, request you to go back to the Menti quiz link. I believe we had shared that. So, in case any of you have dropped off, we can continue from there itself. I can see that all 10 of you are still there. So, I'll quickly continue from there. So, as you see, this is the leaderboard currently. Everyone still has a chance to get back, and we will quickly continue. The third question out of the fourth. UiPath does have integrations coming soon with SageMaker, PageMaker, and there are no upcoming AWS integrations. We have 9. I think one more person to answer. 2, 1, go. Perfect.
It's
So
kind
let's
of a
see
trick
where we
question.
stand. Yeah. Let's see where we stand.
Hey, look at the vote goat.
Okay, it's quite tight.
That's close, yeah.
Very close. Vasant, Ashok, Aileen, Vinod, Archit, you all have chance with this one last question. All the best. AWS Contact Center integration include Connect and Lex, Connect only, Lex future integration. There are no contact center integrations. I think last 5 seconds. 2, 1, and time's up. Connect and Lex.
Nice.
Wow. Just one person. Let's see who got that right.
Oh, you know what? We I think we actually had the wrong answer in there.
Oh, okay. Is that so?
Yeah, I think the first one was correct, but yeah, I think Vasant, you got it.
Yeah, true. Even in that case, Vasant, Ashok, and Aileen, you are pretty much on the top. So Vasant, you have won. Really apologies with that last question. Vasant, I'll request you to just share your email ID on the chat here, and we will share you an interesting gift from UiPath side. You can also DM me personally on chat, and you will hear back from me. Yep. Thank you. Mo, you can pick it up from here.
Cool. Yeah. I mean, I think that's most of what we had. I know Vedant is back. Let's see if we can unmute you. We'll try one more try. If you're able to try to answer a couple of those questions. Rohit, do you want to try to unmute him?
Can you hear me now?
Here we go.
Yes,
Yep,
yes.
we can hear you. Thank you.
Oh, okay, great.
Sorry about that.
Oh, no worries. I'm not sure exactly what happened. But So the question is about, the logs about the robo logs, or is it the orchestrator logs themselves?
So I saw orchestrator logs, but I think that's a good question. Vinod, is that the robot logs as well, or just the orchestrator logs?
Yeah, orchestrator holds pretty much all of these robots logs. Eventually, it's robot logs, but coming out of orchestrator.
Yeah, Vedant, I mean, I think it's an export of orchestrator. So yeah, it's all of our logs that bubble up to that orchestrator level.
Okay, so you can configure the individual robot logs to dump them onto S3. That functionality is already there. For the orchestrator logs, like the application logs themselves, those are collected in Amazon CloudWatch. So you can access those logs from CloudWatch, and if you want to export the logs from CloudWatch to S3, then that that is fairly straightforward as well.
But this is with the assumption the bots are in AWS. We have bots on-prem.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So in that case, you will write, if the bots are on-prem, you will have to write a custom function. It gets a little, it has to be a customized solution where you are writing it either to a temporary storage and then copying it to S3 in a batch fashion, like using a cron job or an alternative. Or the bots themselves, are writing directly to S3 through through like you'll have to. I'm not sure if there's like custom image capabilities within UiPath, but it seems like former, where you'll write them to a temporary file storage and then copy them to S3 in a batch fashion would be the way to go.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Good question.
Yeah, awesome. And I think the only other question we had was about blockchain. So any thoughts about UiPath and AWS and Web3 in particular, enterprise blockchain? Have you seen anything like that out of curiosity about that?
Well, I mean, with blockchain, there's so many different use cases. There is, like AWS does have an enterprise blockchain feature. So there is not a whole lot that is public, like not a whole lot of information that is public. If there's anything specific, we can get you in touch with the right team. But without more details, it's really hard to answer that question.
Oh, cool. Makes perfect sense. Any other questions? Really appreciate everyone's time today. I think that's all we had. Unless there was anything else, we can definitely stay on for a couple of minutes for questions. All right, great. Well, thank you so much, guys. Hope this was helpful. And yeah, look forward to the next session.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Mo. Thank you, Vedant, for your time. And thank you, everyone else, for participating. I will stop the recording as well.